Hey guys, Mike coming back with a recap of my national and a mail day. As usual, I didn't get a whole lot at the national. I mainly go to see Brian and my friends and kind of get caught up on some of them. As usual, and I've done this before, I made my biggest purchase while I was supposed to look at the card while I was at the National. I didn't get a chance. But as soon as I got back, they did an auction, and I won a major addition to the Hank Greenberg collection. And I'm going to save that to last here to show you because I've gotten to the point where there's just a few things I need, and they're very hard to find. And you just have to be patient. I knew this existed for probably a few months now, and it finally came for sale. I was hoping it would be while I was at the National, because the gentleman that was selling it for him had him there, but I didn't get a chance to see him or make an offer until after I got back. But it's kind of a national purchase. But we'll start off with a little mail day. I just got back. I have been collecting, well, a lot of these cards. These are George Washington base cards for my non-sports set. I've had these for years. I bought these back when nobody was collecting this kind of stuff, and they're not high grade, but it's stuff I had in my collection for a while, and I've just been getting them slabbed here lately. I'll start out with this. This is a 1912 Liggett and Myers Mount Vernon. This is the home of George Washington. You can visit it today. It's in Virginia, in Mount Vernon, Virginia. They've restored the home to pretty much what it looked like in the late 1790s. They're working on it all the time, but it's amazing what they've got done. If you've never been there, you should go and learn about George Washington and his family and his history and his legacy. I love going there when I can. It's been way too long. I need to go back. But this is a nice, well over 100-year-old type. It reminds me of like those Ogden's pieces. It's a nice original picture of Mount Vernon from way back when. Got a 2 from SGC. This is a neat card. This is a 1954 Bowman U.S. Navy Victories. It's called Glover's Amphibians. John Glover was a colonel then, I believe. Later became a general, but he was one with his Marblehead mariners or fishermen were the ones that actually escorted Washington over the Delaware in 1776. This card represents them, his soldiers that you've seen the more famous picture of him crossing the Delaware, and this is just a different take on it and giving credit to John Glover's men who did the actual carrying over during the crossing of the Delaware. Neat card, great artwork on it, nice grade. I've had this for a long time. These are really cool. U.S. Naval Victories. So if you see one of these, it's a cool addition. And then we got one of my favorite early sets for non-sports is this T70 Historical Events Series. A lot of nice cards in it. It's not a big set, something I've considered doing. I think I've gotten all the Washington cards out of it now. This is the inauguration of Washington. Came back at 2. It's got a little crease up by the top left there. Very nice artwork on it. Being sworn in as president. This is the Hoffman House. They have different backs, just like you'd think of T206. This one's for Hoffman House Magnum's little cigars. They got a bunch of different varieties. This is a very neat one. A lot of people don't know the history of this. This is the surrender of Cornwallis out of the same set. This one is the Flexo Giants little cigars. Just a little quick history lesson. When General Cornwallis surrendered at Yorktown, he sent his second in command out to surrender his sword to Washington, and he feigned being sick. At least that's how the story goes. So he sent his second out in command with a sword. And what you see being pictured is him presenting the second in command of Cornwallis, presenting his sword to Washington, and you see Washington making a hand gesture over to his second in command. He would not accept the sword from the second in command from the British. He made him give the sword to his second in command, who was Benjamin Lincoln, who's the one that actually accepted the sword at Yorktown. So just kind of a neat little history lesson. They actually got it right, whereas there's a more famous painting that shows Washington taking the sword, which he really didn't do. So anyway, a little history thrown in there. This is a some oddball piece. I can't believe, I was surprised they even slabbed it. It's from Argentina, Falcon Calvo Monumento, series of like famous sculptures and statues over in Argentina. And there's actually this one of Washington over in Argentina. They pop up very rarely. I mean, nobody probably even knows about them, but they did slap. I'm surprised they'd be able to research it and find a slab for it, but they did. And this is a more common 1967 Topps Who Am I? Where they put little mustaches and stuff, and you would read the clues on the back. On Christmas night, 1776, I crossed the Delaware to defeat the British, and that type of thing. Of course, I can't imagine it. I guess it's more for kids, of course, to kind of learn history and such. So anyway, that's a nice little mail day I got back from Mike O. He just did this in an SGC submission, and very glad to get this. Now on to the national stuff, and as usual, I usually come back with 2 or 3 things. When I first got there, me and Brian stayed together as usual. We have a tradition of giving each other a gift when we get there, and he'll show his on a future video, I would assume. As for me, he gave me this, and as funny as I remember bidding on this and not winning it, and it's because he bid on it and won it. And let's see here, this is I think it's 2016 Topps Tribute. It's a 1-of-1 printing plate from the Foundations of Greatness set. Some people don't like printing plates. I always like them. I always thought they added some depth to your collection, especially if you're a player collector. And again, for bench, I love when they come up with certified autograph plates. Most of them are just the plain plates, but I love when they get them to sign, and they distribute those as 1-of-1. So thank you, Brian. That was awesome. Fantastic. At the actual National, I looked at a lot of nice stuff. I thought this year's National was fantastic. Cleveland, I always like the layout. I mean, it's a pain to get there and back to your hotel and such, and it's hard to, you have to go farther to get into, meeting, just to see your friends and the get-togethers and stuff. But I do like the IX Center. The food trucks were nice. They needed more of them, of course, or they needed to supplement them with the basic food that they would have had at, like, say, Chicago or something. There's just very long lines. Bathroom could be a long wait too, but not bad. I saw a lot of more vintage, really nice vintage cards than I'd ever seen at a National before. And I usually walk the whole National every time I go. This really unique, unusual stuff, and I thought it was just exceptional. So the one piece I did find for the Greenberg collection is this premium. This is the 1936 R311 Glossy of Hank. Now, I've already got this. I've had this since I first really started. One of the first premiums I ever got for Hank back in probably 2000. Oh goodness, 2008 or 10 or something like that. And it's a 3.5. These are very thin and they're very hard to grade. The highest one is a 5, and when I stumbled across this one, this is a 5. There's only 2 of them, and there's none graded higher, so I thought it'd be a good time to upgrade mine. So very nice, premium and high grade, and glad to put that in the collection. Beautiful piece. You see these occasionally, but they're usually in poor or fair condition. You just don't see them gradable really that much. So very cool. And on to this piece. This was a piece that a gentleman that had these I talked to for months. He finally decided to sell them. The guy that was selling them for him came to the National, and he brought them with him. And I didn't get to see him while I was at the National, but after that, I thought he'd be selling it there, but he wasn't. He was just kind of, I think he was there more just to get a gauge on what they're worth. These are very, very rare. These are called Diamond Dust Punchboard cards. This is not the one it came from. This is just an example to let you know. Back in the 30s, 40s, 50s, I assume, maybe even 60s, some bars and places like that, you could go into it, and this would be like a gambling thing. As you can tell, it's a 5 cents a sale, and these were like all the players that were represented in these small pictures. DiMaggio, Greenberg, it depended on the card. They made a lot of different ones of these. For 5 cents, you could poke out a hole, and inside would be a piece of paper. And if the paper had the number of the player on it, so like Greenberg was $2.99. If the white piece of paper came out usually, and it would say $2.99, you would match and win $1. The last punch in each section receives $1. So people would play this as like a little bar game. You punch out a hole for a nickel, and if you hit one of the winning papers, you get $1. So, not much, but, buck back then was a lot in the 30s and 40s. But there is a certain board or boards that very few know about. But instead of the white pieces of paper that just are generic with the numbers on them when you punch it out, and as you can see, these are pretty thick. I mean, it's like a 3/4 of an inch thick. There's a board or boards that actually has pictures of the players on them. And, people played this game at a bar. It was older, people older than kids, so they didn't collect this kind of stuff. They wouldn't care if they won $1, they were happy to get $1. But there's some cards, and again, it's not this one, but there is a card that you can punch them out and you actually got a player. And this is the one for Hank Greenberg. Now, the Pops, it's listed as a 1940 Diamond Dust Hank Greenberg punchboard card. Authentic evidence of trimming. There are some that have a white border around them. But most of them, I have no border. They assume that they've been trimmed. I'm not convinced of that. I think they might have come out like that. But who knows? If you can look at real close, you can see that it's like an accordion. And that was folded. And they've tried to determine how they were put in the card. But there are some cards that were super thick to where, because these are probably a good inch, a little over an inch wide. If you roll them up like an accordion, like it's there, it would be too thick to fit into this card. Some people think they rolled it, and then they kind of made like a C out of it, in a circular, and inserted it that way into the card. Some people think it was the board that had them had a very thick board, and you could roll it up and just fit it in there as like a little cylinder. Whatever it is, there's just a handful of these. I think SGC slabbed like 20 something of them, and PSA's done 30 something of them. For Hank, their PSA is slabbed 1 as an authentic. And until recently, when this guy here found a bunch of these, and he had about maybe, I don't know, 15 or 20, maybe a little more in this group he just auctioned off on Facebook. Well, I should say accepted offers on Facebook. But there's only one now graded by SGC for Hank. So there's only 2 of them that's been slabbed, one by SGC and one by PSA for Hank Greenberg. And that's just, doesn't look like much, but if you're a player collector like I am, that's first time I've ever seen it was when just a few months ago, and I've been collecting for 10, 12, 15 years, and to think that I actually own it now is just kind of mind-boggling. So happy to add that to the collection. It's one of those super rare pieces that I never expect to have, but I'm glad to get a hold of one as I'm getting older, and I'm not I don't know if I'll ever see a few of these pieces. There's probably about another half dozen that I need that I may or may not ever see again. But I am happy to add this to the collection. So very neat piece, very unusual. And I know they had a DiMaggio in this collection that went for like $1,500. So they're not cheap. They're your best bet would be if you stumble across somebody who's selling them, and if you put them up for the right auction, you might get a good deal on them. But they are not cheap for the player collectors that really want to put them in their collection. So anyway, that is it. Didn't get, like I said, a whole bunch, but this made this is fantastic here, and so glad to add it in. So anyway, hope everybody enjoyed. Looking forward to Chicago next year. You never know what you're going to find. And good to see everybody. I really enjoyed talking and seeing everybody at the show. So thanks everyone, and take care, and Lord willing, we'll do it again. Thank you. Bye-bye.